The Honeymooners. I worked at a Holiday Inn one summer before starting grad school. I was part of food and beverage service, which meant I spent most of my time in the restaurant. But some really bizarre stuff happened when I went to other parts of the hotel, especially when doing room service. One night, a young couple checked in and we never saw them after that. They never came out of the room and ordered room service for every single meal. We only ever spoke to the man when he called to room order service, and only saw him when we delivered it. He always answered the door alone and only far enough to hand us payment. The only thing that let us know another person was there was that he ordered 2 meals each time, usually burgers. They also never took the "Do Not Disturb" sign off the door, so housekeeping never went in either. After a couple of days, the staff started talking about this sort of strange behavior. I assumed that they were perhaps on their honeymoon. It was the only thing that even remotely explained why they never left the room and didn't want to be disturbed. After about 3 days though, we realized that the trays we had brought the meals on were still inside the room, and we were running out of trays. Even if they did not understand they were supposed to return the trays, there's a little card on each one that explains that when they are done with the meal, guests can set the trays outside their room and someone will come and get it. Finally, we had to do something because we were running out of trays. It had been a few days, and they ordered room service for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so they had to have more than a half a dozen trays inside their room. With our manager's permission, we called and asked if we could remove some of the trays from their room. The guy, who had been extremely polite the entire time, said sure. Another girl and I got a cart and headed off to the room. The man met us at the door dressed only in shorts, which he was zipping up as he opened the door. Frankly, this itself isn't that unusual. I was still under the impression they were on their honeymoon, so lots of alone naked time with the new spouse is expected. He was at least wearing clothing. We quickly went in and noticed several odd, disturbing things. First, the trays we were after were stacked all over the room, covering every available surface, including the TV and even the floor. Each one had half-eaten food. This is 2 or 3 days worth of old food just sitting inside the room. That's pretty gross to start with. Second, the woman was lying in the bed with the blankets pulled up to her neck. When she shifted a bit, we could see she was wearing a t-shirt and underwear only. Again, not that unusual. She just seemed to be really out of it. I thought she had just been under the influence of something, or perhaps sick or injured. She didn't speak to us, but she was mumbling a bit and her eyes weren't focusing on anything. It was completely bizarre. Third, the room was sweltering. The heat was on, and this was about mid-July in the south, so nearly 100 degrees outside. We were in a sweat just being in the room for a minute or two. Again, the woman had blankets covering completely her entire body, except for when she moved slightly and they slipped off. We got our stuff loaded up, and the guy, though very nice and polite, clearly couldn't wait to get rid of us. We waited until they were out of sight before turning to each other and confirming that, yes, what we had just seen was incredibly weird. I went from thinking this was a young couple on a very sex-filled honeymoon to wondering if this woman was sick or going through detox or something like that. It was just overall weird. Hot room, nearly naked people, rotting food lying around, the woman's behavior, their reluctance to let anyone in, even to clean, and their reluctance to leave. It was strange. I was concerned about her, so I asked my manager about it. The couple was later asked to leave because of non-payment, but that's all I know. Oh, I didn't mention the smell. That was another thing. It smelled like sickness or rot. You know the way your skin smells when you take off a Band-Aid? Well, the whole room smelled like that. Some of it might have been the food, or maybe their sweat from the damn heat, but it was awful. To this day, I wonder what I witnessed. Room service. Throwaway account due to the embarrassing nature of what occurred. In the 1980s, my family went to the SEC basketball tournament in Birmingham, Alabama. Because of so many fans showing up for the game, all of the good hotels and decent motels were sold out. So, my family had to stay at a very seedy-looking travel lodge. The door itself wasn't very secure. The phone was two-tone black and white. The TV had only one channel, and you could barely tell Three's Company was on. I had to pee, so I went to the bathroom and noticed the toilet top wasn't there. By toilet top, I don't mean the seat, I mean the lid over the water tank in the back. I didn't think much of it, since the rest of the room was so messed up. My dad was out trying to find tickets to the basketball games, and I decided to just take a nap. After a while of napping, there was a knock on the door. I guess the door didn't have a peephole because my older sister asked, "Who's there?" The reply was, room service. I guess either my sister or my mom opened the door, and I heard them slam the door and go hysterical, going, "Oh my God, oh my God!" The knock on the door had already half woken me up, but their shouting woke me up for real. I asked them what was going on, and they said there was a scruffy-looking guy holding the lid to the toilet, using it upside down as a tray, with a dildo, anal beads, and 2 packaged condoms sitting on it. The dildo was white or maybe off-white, and my mom and sister said it didn't necessarily look unwashed, but it had a brownish stain on most of the shaft. They pushed chairs up against the door until Dad got back, and then we changed motels. So, travel lodge room service. Let's not meet. My room service. The following story took place in 2004. The dialogue itself is paraphrased, but accurately conveys what happened. Every year during March break, my family would drive roughly 2 hours into the city from our rural town to enjoy a college basketball tournament. We routinely stayed at a large, reputable hotel minutes from the downtown core, and were no strangers to the city. However, this year was different. There had been a rash of violent muggings and swarmings in the downtown core of the city, which had left many severely injured. I remember reading about these attacks in the newspaper. I've always enjoyed reading the news even as a young child and feeling scared. Those reports rattled me in a way typical news stories don't, possibly because I wasn't used to the threat of violence so close to home. So, it was Saturday night, around 11 p.m., and my family, mom, dad, and my little sister were winding down and preparing for bed. It's worth mentioning that at this point, my mother is naturally paranoid, much more so than other moms. While it can be annoying at times, it often leaves us prepared for bad situations. Tonight would be one of those times. I was sitting on the second of 2 beds, furthest from the entrance to the room, when there was a knock at the door. "Room service!" a voice called out. My parents glanced at each other and my mom motioned for my dad to look through the people in the door. "We didn't order anything," my dad said as he sized up the short, stocky white male standing outside our door. He had with him a trolley with what appeared to be a meal on it and was wearing a green hotel uniform. "Are you sure?" he responded. "I've got an order here for room 4109. The guy at the door didn't seem pushy or out of place at all. In fact, if it wasn't for the recent violence in the city, we probably wouldn't have had our guard up in the first place. However, that night, my parents were certainly cautious, and my father firmly told the man at the door that we did not order any food. He left politely without incident. We had little reason to be suspicious, and my dad wanted to chalk it up to a mistake on the hotel's behalf and go to bed. However, my mother eventually pressured him to call the front desk to check if everything was on the up and up. 15 minutes or so after the man had left our door, my dad got off the phone with the front desk. They have no record of us ordering food, and their room service staff wear white, not green, he said grimly. I noticed my mother's face whiten, and my sister looked scared. The hotel immediately sent security up to our floor to see if the intruder was still around. They checked on us, then went about searching the floor. Security came back to our room a few minutes later, telling us they found an empty trolley in the stairwell, but that there was no one to be found. With that, they departed, and we triple-checked the locks on the door before hitting the hay. The next morning, I was the first one awake. I didn't want to turn on the TV and wake my family, and there was no newspaper inside the room. So, I booted up my dad's laptop and checked the local newspaper's website. The first headline read, "Man stabbed outside City Hotel." Apparently, at roughly 11:30 the previous night, right after we had turned away the fake hotel employee at our door, a pedestrian had been attacked outside our hotel in the middle of the sidewalk. He had been stabbed twice and then badly beaten in plain sight, yet his wallet wasn't stolen. The article went on to say that there was no apparent motive for the mugging. It was pure violence for violence sake. It also mused as to why the pedestrian had been stabbed to the point where he could not fight back, but then beaten by hand. I woke my parents up right away and showed them the article. My mother became very nervous and checked about the room, even though it was now morning, while my dad looked very angry and reached for the phone. Naturally, we contacted the police and told them our story about the previous night. We provided as much information about the man at our door as possible, thinking he may have been responsible for the assault. But no one was ever caught. Thankfully, we had several inches of locked door between us and the fake employee. It may have just saved our lives. He said he was room service. Second post on here. This happened about 2 nights ago. I'm a tiny 15-year-old girl for reference. My parents and I are currently on vacation in New Orleans, Louisiana. We got here around 8:30 p.m. after a long drive, so me and my parents headed up to our hotel room where we rested for a bit. My parents then went to find somewhere to park the car, as the hotel's parking was really expensive. I'm always kind of paranoid, so I flipped the door latch to lock it and went back to playing on my phone. About 5 minutes after my parents left, I hear a clicking noise. It goes on and on for almost 5 minutes, until I realize someone is fiddling with the door handle. I assume someone has the wrong room at this point, and I get up to investigate. About halfway to the door, it flies open and is stopped by the latch. I let out a little scream because it surprised me, and I hear someone say, "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Can you let me in?" Whoever it was had a Spanish accent, so I knew it wasn't my parents. The person keeps attempting to push the door open, and I look through the peephole to see a man in his late 20s or early 30s. He keeps alternating between shoving at the door and texting someone on his phone. I ask him who he is, and he replies, "I'm room service. Just let me in really quick." This could have been true because he had some kind of hotel key in his hand. which I assume is how he eventually opened the door, but he was dressed in a t-shirt and jeans. Definitely not what every other employee was wearing downstairs. I was kind of creeped out at this point, as he is still attempting to get in quite forcefully and repeating, "Let me in! I won't take long!" I ask if he could come back a little while later, and he pauses. "Later?" "Yeah," I reply. "Later." He doesn't say anything else and left. And I quickly shut the door and make sure it's still locked. We never ordered room service or anything like that, and I told my parents when they got back around 20 minutes later. They were concerned as they hadn't sent anyone or anything. We stayed for the next 2 days and he never did come back. Maybe he was really just a rude hotel staff, but all in all, he scared the hell out of me, especially since he said he was room service, not housekeeping, and he didn't have any food with him at the time. Who knows? But let's not meet. The look on his face. I had just graduated from high school and was at my first ever job. I worked front desk at a hotel and also helped out with room cleaning service when they were short-staffed or when someone checked out after the other cleaning staff went home for the day. I was working one evening at the front desk with my coworker Alexis when a guest checked out. Since I was the newest worker, the job of going to clean the room fell to me, while Alexis stayed at the front desk. I got the cart with cleaning supplies and sheets and towels and went over to the room. Everything was normal at first. I left the hotel room's door open so I could easily and quickly back and forth to the cart for supplies. It didn't fit inside the room. I was stripping the beds when I heard a man talk to me. I spun around, startled, because I had not realized anyone was there. It was around 7 p.m., and not a lot of guests were walking about, so I didn't expect to see anyone. It's been several years now, so I can't really remember what exactly he said, but it was along the lines of that he had come into the front desk multiple times to watch me and had always wanted to talk to me, but wasn't comfortable doing so with Alexis there. I realized that I had noticed this guy come to the desk area in the past couple days, but I figured he just wanted the free coffee. He continued on, joking about how hard I was working. I was trying to finish cleaning up as quickly as I could so I could get back to the front desk because this guy made me jittery, and how I should relax and talk to him for a while. I politely told him that I had to do my job and could not stop to talk. He kept going on and on about how he liked to hang out at the nearby casino and how he was such a really nice guy and everyone was his friend once they got to know him. He told me how pretty I was and that he'd like to take me out. The entire time, he's in the doorway blocking me. Now, I was a very inexperienced young woman who had never really dated before, and all of this was very uncomfortable and disturbing for me. Plus, it was my first job, and I was afraid that if I told this guy to back off, he'd complain I was rude to my boss, and I'd get fired. So I tried to subtly let him know I wasn't interested and that I didn't want to talk. I don't know if he didn't get the message or if he just didn't care, but I suspect the latter. I just finished up replacing the towels in the bathroom when he mumbled something about how I probably wanted this weird guy to go away and leave me alone now. I only sort of heard him, and in my habit of just trying to agree with guests when they babble on and on, I said something like, "Yep, you know it." The look that crossed that man's face still haunts me today. I can't begin to explain how terrifying it was. It was pure rage and hatred, instantaneous and uncontrollable. I was sure in that moment that I was about to be killed. I had never seen such deranged fury in my life. Every fiber of me tensed up, and I got that deep, primal fear in my body that told me I was in serious danger. All I could think about was this one story I read about the only woman who had escaped from Ted Bundy. She said that in a second, he went from a nice, decent, friendly-looking man to this monster filled with the most intense hatred and evil she had ever seen. I thought to myself, God, this is what she meant. He started to take a step towards me, but by then my brain had caught up to what he'd said and the situation I had accidentally put myself into. And I blurred something like, "Kidding! I love talking to you! You're awesome!" Again, his face instantly changed, and he was smiling and flirting with me again, now more intensely than ever. Shaking with fear and adrenaline, I pushed past him, grabbed the cart, and wheeled it as fast as I could back towards the front desk. He followed me along, singing my name. This guy was a stranger to me. Why would he do that? Repeating his request to take me out. I again politely declined and, abandoning the cart, rushed into the front desk office. Alexis was there, and when the man saw her, he scowled and walked away. I told her what happened, shaking and crying. She didn't know what to do. She just advised me to stay in the front desk area for the rest of my shift. About an hour later, he came in and stared at me. He didn't try to talk to me again. Alexis was there, and he just angrily snatched up some coffee before stalking out while glaring at me. I didn't see him again after that. He checked out the next morning. I know this probably doesn't sound super creepy to a lot of people, but I really was terrified. If you could have just seen his face, I have no doubt in my mind that he was gonna seriously hurt me, if not kill me. I just remember how instantaneously his transformation from happy into untamed rage was, and I wonder what else he's done in his life and to whom. I think I was very lucky. I worry that maybe someone else wasn't as lucky or won't be as lucky in the future.